One other thing that I would say about this, so I'm looking at this picture. I'll hold it still a bit so you can actually kind of see what it is. So it's just a village of the palace and foundations of 1650. That's the age. People in this age had no idea what Islam is. Now, I know reincarnation happens so that, a lot of people who are living in London now might have been Islamic in their past life. They might have been from a different culture. But looking at this Pacific town, back then, cultures didn't mix. So there could be plenty of people that have no clue that rape is even a thing. There are some people that are so blind. Like, if you don't have the TV, you don't know what goes on. You don't know, what happens in your neighboring city, because it might be hundreds of miles away, and you probably haven't even left the town that you live in. The amount of blindness that would have existed 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago would be heavy. And yeah, I think if you look at it from the perspective there of, imagine you're one of these people, whether you're a baker or a library person, or just, there's all these basic jobs. Maybe you're just walking around with a donkey all day. You would have had a very farmer would have been you would have had a very cold or sheltered life. And I think there is a huge number of people that had a very sheltered life and had no idea about the problems. Maybe they got married at 12. Maybe they, maybe they have experienced rape. Maybe they haven't. I feel like a lot of poorer people would have experienced rape, but some would have just got lucky because they were kind of religious back then, and they tried to control rape by saying you're going to get a hell and stuff like that. And I know that they did a lot to try and prevent that. And now if these people got reincarnated and are now social workers, I think it's likely that many of them don't really know like how bad Islam is or what happens in the Middle East. And I've heard a lot of dark stories from the Islamic community, and that you're supposed to stay silent and you're not supposed to say anything. But the number of Islamic people who say that their mother was beaten regularly, or their cousin was beaten regularly, it's high. The true number of Islamic women who have abusive partners is so much higher than most places. Islam really, it favors abuse, because it actually says that you're allowed to beat a woman with a slipper. Now, if you wanted to change that slipper and turn it into some sort of boot or something, you probably could do, and you'd probably say, oh well, God says you're allowed to do a slipper, so why not? Or a flip-flop or whatever, a sandal, I think it is. It might not even be a slipper, it might be a sandal. I think it's a sandal. You might go a little bit more and say, well, God allowed one thing, so why not this? I mean, you obviously deserve it. I don't know, but abuse is high, and there are a lot of people that have a very sheltered life. Hence, they might think that it's not possible for Pakistani people to rape others. They don't understand that their culture is very different. Their whole culture was about, wearing veils and saying covered. Now, if you're not covered, you deserve to be raped. Like that is part of is an Islamic kind of belief system. I've heard people say that if you don't cover up, then if someone rapes you, it's your fault. And I think there have been a lot of people that have been completely ignorant to it. And when I'm looking at these images, every single one of these people probably wouldn't have any clue that there is a religion out there that says if you don't cover up, you're going to be raped, or you deserve to be raped if it happens. I bet none of these people know. And I know the city is so big now. London is such a big city that there is so many people that know, and people all over the world. There's all over England. I don't know how many of them were Islamic, but there's a huge amount of ignorance in some more than others. And yeah, and I just think that it would be easy to turn a blind eye to something. And I think if you've gone a whole life where you know nothing about Islam, nothing about their beliefs or their traditions, and then you live a life in this age, and okay, you can learn more, but you don't, because you didn't in your past life, and people like to live in a similar way to how they lived in their past life. And people, 200 years ago were incredibly ignorant for other cultures and other beliefs and other ways of life and stuff like that. And I feel like people like to repeat a sort of cycle of what they kind of they want to be the same person in a way that people don't generally like to change. And so often these people, get reincarnated, and they want to keep themselves as ignorant to things as possible, and just believe that, oh yeah, we're all the same, and stuff like that. And but yeah, only people who have really gone through abuse in a past life can actually, that woman who went through that abuse, she's going to be fearful of Islamic beliefs, and men, particularly Islamic men from, or people from Islamic countries. She's going to be fearful for that for the rest of her life, and it's going to be something that she carries on with the next life and the life after. But I think that fear, or that cautiousness, that concern is actually has made her and will make her so much more smarter in the future, as to what to be careful of, and who to be wary of, and stuff like that. And sometimes it's not a good thing, but it's if it makes you smarter, then it's a good thing. Whereas the people who are most ignorant are the people who probably haven't faced much abuse. That's kind of why I thought the other person wasn't, she didn't seem like someone who had been through real abuse. She seemed just like someone who thought that just prostitution was just the way out, and I'm sure she went through prostitution and stuff, but to call prostitution trafficking is not right, because that's very different. But yeah, to be so drunk and not remember, like, that's just people taking advantage. And it's awful to think that there are people that do that, that see someone, a very young person, 14, 15, 16, very, very drunk, and just do turns on them. I don't understand what you must be thinking to think that's okay, other than to think that you must have been some sort of wolf in your past life, and you just found a prey that you're just taking advantage of. That's completely animalistic behavior. But yeah, I know that people want to live in the wealthier countries, and if those Pakistani people were from a poor country, it probably means that they were more likely not something that has gone through this, but rather was something that that was an animal in a past life or something. But yeah, hopefully if we can reduce the population, we can get the Matrix to sort the difference between the animal souls and the human souls. I think if there are someone that's had sex with a 14-year-old, you like them, you got on, that is also different to a bunch of guys that have just literally got a 14-year-old drunk and then just taking turns on a sort of half unconscious child. That's just absolutely disgusting. And there's all sorts of different degrees when it comes to this subject, and I don't know why I should use the word grape or traffic or transporting. I don't see why I should change the words. I think it'd be better to use the words that they are, because it's a serious topic and I need to say the right words.